and welcome to the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. Before we get to the show, let's get the pleasantries out of the way.
First of all, our website. If you want more information about our little podcast, go to wearethecontrarians.com. That's where you'll find links to our old episodes, to our Patreon channel, and to our awesome Contrarians merch.
You can show your support by buying a Contrarians mug or a pillow.
I like the laptop bags myself.
Second of all, if you enjoy the show, tell your friends. Or even go a step further and leave us a 5-star review on whatever platform you use to listen to your podcasts.
Finally, if you want to reach out directly to us, that's what social media is for. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at Contrarian Prime, or check out our Facebook page at facebook.com/Contrarian Prime.
Julio runs our official Twitter account at Contrarian Prime, but if you want to give me a piece of your mind or just want to banter about pro wrestling, you can follow me at Contrarian Alex.
That's it. That's our intro.
Now, time for the show.
This is all
And we are recording for Contrarians Corner for Pretty Persuasion.
Hello and welcome back to the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. My name is Alex, joined as always by my friend and co-host Julio. Julio, 2023 rages on. We bring in yet another entry, and dare I say, one of the more interesting entries that we will have this year.
It excites me / worries me that this could set the tone for the rest of patron picks in 2023, especially considering that we're going to have a whole lot more of them, you know, at least in the first half of the year. But this is Ben Murray just throwing something at us that I did not expect from his respectable British self.
We're here today to discuss the 2005 Evan Rachel Wood, Ron Livingston, James Woods, Jane Krakowski vehicle that is Pretty Persuasion, an American black comedy film directed by Marcos Siega, who this was his second film, and it looks like he's only directed 2 films since then.
Oh, wait. Marcos Siega? This movie is directed by a man? What?
Wild, huh? I take that back. He's done a lot of television directing. Oh, he directed 3 episodes of Veronica Mars.
Same tone as this movie.
Some Dexter, some True Blood. The Charlie's Angels pilot from 2011. This guy's been around, man. Yeah, and his follow-up to this was Underclassmen, an action comedy film starring Nick Cannon, Shawn Ashmore, Kelly Hu, and Cheech Marin. Man, this guy can't pick a tone, can he? Julio, this is brought to us by one of our wonderful patrons who has put Pretty Persuasion on the table for us. Who is the Ron Livingston lover that we have to thank for this?
Let's hope he's a Ron Livingston lover and not a James Woods lover.
Yes.
We'll find out because he sent a note to be read during Real Talk. But yeah, this is, as I mentioned, this is from Ben Murray, Filmbusters Ben, a man known for his exquisite taste. He's a fellow Halloween fan for you. He looks down on the MCU when it comes to me. But we have a lot of overlaps, I think, in when it comes to movies that we admire. And he just threw this our way without saying much other than he heard you lament the current state of James Woods' mental health in recent After Hours, I think. Mm. And so he said, like, oh, well, Alex was just saying this and made me think of this movie. And we'll get more into what Ben thinks of Pretty Persuasion, but he said, do it, and we're doing it. It's a rotten movie, so, you know, it fits the rules. It fits the brief.
Yeah, it fits definitely within the bounds of what we try to do here on the Contrarians, a 33% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Yes, Ben Murray is typically an ally of mine. I think we're like at an 8 out of 10. We'll agree on movies, so we'll see if we agree on this one, if it's one of the 8 or one of the 2. But being a 33% on Rotten Tomatoes, let's just get right to it. What we do here on the Contrarians is we rage against the Rotten Tomatoes machine. That is our battle cry. Find a movie on Rotten Tomatoes that is highly rated, a lot of times accompanied by that beautiful trademark logo that's certified fresh. And what we'll do is bring that movie down a peg or two, or maybe even 10 sometimes. Find things in the movie that aren't that perfect, that may not justify that high rating that they get, be it direction, bad acting, poor storytelling choices, bad score, what have you, in an attempt to say, hey, the critics might not have this one completely right. And then conversely, on alternating episodes, typically we shoot for about 30% and below, one of those nasty green splotches known as rotten. And as you could guess, we make a case for the positive merit in that film, build it up, talk about the bold storytelling choices, the good acting, underrated soundtrack, good cinematography, location shots, things this movie has a good deal of. I mean, we do this all in an attempt to say, number one, this shit is subjective. You can be as over the moon about something as you want to be, or as downright cynical and negative about something as you want to be if you truly set your mind to it. And then number two, something Julio and I have been talking about since we first met. The Rotten Tomato system is a little bit flawed, and those ratings don't always tell the whole story. So we're here to do that. That all comprises the first portion of our podcast, what we refer to as Contrarians Corner. Julio, if listeners want to know how we really feel about the movie we're discussing, they just have to tune into part 2. Check out the second half of the episode.
That is correct. The second half of every episode, aptly titled Real Talk, that's where we tell you how we really feel. Just forget about the Tomatometer score. It's just our honest experience watching the movie. Many times, like in today's episode, it's a movie that we were experiencing for the first time. Alex and I hadn't even heard of Pretty Persuasion before. Well, that's not true. I'll get into the real talk, but I was vaguely familiar with this movie, just on a very superficial level. But yeah, it's our first time, so I don't know how Alex feels. He doesn't know how I feel. And I only know that Ben feels a certain way because, like I said, he sent a message that we'll read in real talk. But for you, listeners, you're going to find out all that stuff on the second half. First, this is a rotten movie, so we're going to say really nice things about it. As much as it may pain me to say nice things about James Woods.
Yeah, I had never even heard of this movie. So like when the credits were rolling, it was just unraveling more and more. Like I knew it had Evan Rachel Wood because we looked that up. And I think I knew Jane Krakowski because that might have been one of the people that accompanied her name with it. But when the credits were rolling, I was just like, man, we're in for at least something here.
What is this? When is this set?
So being 33%, it's a movie critics didn't much care for. Even though this premiered at Sundance, which, you know, is typically, that's, you know, a lot of times grounds for, especially something like this, for it to come out and critics go, oh, you got to go see this. It's so daring and bold and vivacious, but it didn't really work. And I assumed it was just based off of like the amount of reviews were low, but it looks like there's 80 reviews, so it's a decent pool to pull from. An audience score of 62%, but that critical consensus, that Tomatometer, coming in at 33%. So, Julio, what were you able to find about what the critics were saying?
All right. A few rotten quotes from the Rotten Tomatoes website. You want fresh quotes? Just wait for real talk. We're going to start with Felicia Feaster from Creative Loafing, who says, Pretty Persuasion is a slutty little movie pretending to be an important one.
Jeez.
Damn, Felicia.
Slut shaming, literally.
From the go. Setting the tone. On the other hand, well, not on the other hand, on the same hand, Walter Chaw from Film Freak Central says, pretty much just a geek show with a tacked on bedwetting moral. Bedwetting moral. Walter Chaw sounding like a bully with this quote.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure Walter understood what was going on here.
He goes hard when he doesn't like a movie. He goes on the offensive, and I guess I respect that, but I also shake my head at it a lot. Ben Kenigsberg from The Village Voice says, a hand grenade lobbed at no place in particular. I've always thought that The Village Voice has a very particular way of approaching film criticism. It's almost like like the writing surreal poetry. Hand grenade, loved at no place in particular. Good job, Ben.
Structure it like a haiku.
Yeah. And finally, Eric D. Snyder from ericdsnyder.com. What Pretty Persuasion seems to want most of all is to be outrageous. How is that a bad thing? Especially when it succeeds. Were you outraged by while watching this movie, Alex?
I mean, outrage might not be the word. I didn't know where it was going from one scene to the next towards the end, but outrage is not the word. And also, I don't think that's what this movie really wants.
Can you see 2005 America being outraged? Pre-Trump America?
What was 2005 Brokeback Mountain? Yep, Brokeback Mountain was 05. Okay, so 05 was the year Crash came out. So people just wanted very, very comfortable milquetoast. They wanted white people solving racism for you type thing.
Well, that doesn't really happen in this movie. You get white people celebrating racism.
Yeah, there was a lot of safe bets that year. But yeah, that's kind of a ridiculous thing to say. Especially considering movies that have come out since that are similar to this in tone that have been just, profoundly applauded.
So here's your first survival tip. This is Beverly Hills, so a lot of the kids that go here have rich and famous parents, and it's good to know who's who. Like, that's Josh Horowitz. His dad's the famous Laura Larry Horowitz. He defended that baseball player who killed his wife. He got him off, too. Even though they found him running around covered in blood with a baseball bat screaming, "I killed the bitch! I killed the bitch!"
Pretty Persuasion, again, directed by Marco Siega and written by Skandar Halim. I'm trying to see what else this gentleman has put to paper. It looks like...
Wait. So the movie's also written by a man? Unbelievable. That's a real outrage.
I wonder if this is all just about a boy. Yeah, he's got some writing credits to his name, but as far as like from a film perspective, looks like a lot of his writing comes from the television field. So this is the story of Kimberly Joyce, a precocious, narcissistic, sociopathic high school student at Roxbury Academy, an elite preparatory school in Beverly Hills. She and her best friend Brittany take Randa, a new Muslim student who recently immigrated from the Middle East, under their wing. Kimberly's home life is troubled. Her bigoted and disaffected father, Hank, an electronics executive, shows little interest in her life, while her vapid stepmother, Kathy, constantly attempts to reprimand her for coarse language and attitude. Kimberly dreams of becoming an actress and obtains the coveted role of Anne Frank in a school play. This is a Roadside Attractions release. I'm a bit of a whore for a good studio signature, so I'd like to see in that. The opening is basically the tone of the movie. Men suck. As Kimberly, Evan Rachel Wood, is auditioning for a part of a television show, and it's just these guys just basically eyeing her up and down the whole time. And it's going to be a television show where she would potentially play like this French woman who's literally just there to be eye candy. The main takeaway from this opening was that Kendra Wilkinson is one of the women waiting in line, and she's not credited in the movie. And I was just like, holy shit, that's Kendra Wilkinson. And I saw one of the comments on the IMDb page for this was like, did anyone else notice Kendra Wilkinson at the beginning?
Who is she, Alex?
Okay.
I'm ignorant of the Wilkinson legacy. I'm guessing number 1 wrestler, number 2 porn star.
Somewhere in between. She was a Playboy centerfold. Do you not remember The Girls Next Door? That was like mandatory viewing. I think it came on Sunday nights. That was in college. That and it wasn't just dudes getting around watching it horny. I remember my roommate Ashley and some of her friends would watch that with us. It was Kendra Wilkinson, Holly Madison, and Bridget something or other. They were like the 3 women that lived with Hugh Hefner, and it was like the story of like their life, and it was just your standard fucking trashy reality show. But this must have been before that, before she like picked up any momentum or anything, or became like a celebrity of the moment, because she's not drawn attention to at all. She's really just an extra in the background. You would probably know Holly Madison if you saw her, because she kind of transferred some of her success from being a Playboy playmate into like, I think she might have done like cosmetic products or something. But anyway, nothing that puts you smack dab back more in the mid 2000s than being reminded of The Girls Next Door.
Well, how about Ron Livingston being billed in the opening credits before James Woods? What'd you think of that?
Burger? I mean, that's all I can really think of. Burger and let me see. Is his name in Office Space? Is it Peter? Let me see if
I think so. That sounds right.
Let's see. Office Space. Peter Gibbons. Nice.
Nice.
And that was for some reason I always feel like Office Space is mid-90s, but it was right at the tail end of the millennium. But that's here nor there because Ron Livingston was still, cashing checks, snapping necks. He was fresh off his 8-episode stretch of Sex and the City. Came in here and a bit of an interesting case with this guy. I feel like we've talked about him before on here in that he was obviously a successful actor and did a lot of high profile projects, but it never really felt like he hit the next level. He never went into like overdrive or, the next gear or whatever expression you want to use. And it's an interesting thing in this movie because we're going to get into it here before too long, but this was certainly not, what you would think of where Ron Livingston would shine, being the male lead in a rom-com or something like that.
Well,
it's
that is simplifying his character in this movie a lot.
No. I'm saying that it's not that. He took this. He took this a look at this and been like, all right, well, it's not going so far the way I thought it would. So let's do something that's either going to really get some attention or just tank miserably.
Last time I saw Ron Livingston in a movie was Dinner with Schmucks, which I know you've seen because you brought it up before.
Incorrect.
But do you remember
You've seen
that
he's Drinking Buddies. You've seen that.
Okay. I stand corrected. Although, no, he probably has about the same amount of screen time in both.
Yeah, now I'm trying to think in Dinner with Schmucks, isn't he like the asshole nemesis of Paul Rudd?
Yeah,
okay.
he's the bad guy.
Okay. Well, he's the bad guy in this too.
I think that when it's all said and done, there's a fierce competition about who's the worst person in this movie.
Yeah, I want to get into that. So let's set the stage here. Some of the other characters in this, I texted Julio. I'm like, holy shit, it's Troy Nelson. And he's like, I don't know who that is. And I sent him a picture of Troy for our Coen Brothers Inside Llewyn Davis fans. Troy Nelson is the character from The Military in it that Bud Grossman has a vested interest in. And, Llewyn doesn't understand him at all, gives him shit. That has the line of, what do you do now? You plug yourself in. Stark Sands is the actor's name, and in this film, he plays Troy. So there you go.
Very limited options, I guess, when you're Stark Sands.
But he's the ex-boyfriend of Kimberly, now dating Brittany. As things get kind of murky in high school. Friends will date, your exes and things like that. The local news reporter, Emily Klein, played by Jenna Maroney, Jackie Jormjomp, Jane Krakowski, who, interesting part for her here, we find out that she's like setting up, she wants to do like an expose on the life of the high school student, because we were introduced to her kind of before any of the other characters really come into play. And she has like one of the lines I thought was so funny that I wrote down, because it's positioned the way the scene is like it's happening in some like government office, and she's explaining to the gentleman behind the desk what she wants to do. And he's like, okay. And she goes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. He goes, it's pronounced Meyer. And then we learn that he's like the principal of the high school.
Yeah. So she's Drew Barrymore, never been kissed, except that she's not undercover.
Missed opportunity with her as a movie actress. I mean, obviously she went on to have a literal iconic role as Jenna Maroney on 30 Rock, and she was in that one Muppets Christmas movie, and she has plenty of credits to her name. But you watch something like this and you think she could have been a movie star, maybe not the leading lady, but definitely like a player.
I think once you star in The Rural Juror, it's like all that's left is TV.
Well done. And then, as we mentioned, Ron Livingston, who plays Percy Anderson in this, he is the school's English and drama teacher, and seems to really enjoy his job, take it very seriously. But I think there's
terrible choice of words.
I mean, it seems like he really does enjoy the academia part of it, but I mean, almost immediately we learn that this dude, there's something a bit off and a bit creepy about him, I guess. Do you view like Whose perspective do you feel like you're watching this from? Because so much happens so quick in the beginning of this movie that you don't really know what's up and what's down.
That's the trick of it, right? That you're never sure what's real and what isn't. Like I think that, yeah, right now we're talking about it from the perspective of having finished the movie, so we know how quickly the truth changes. But in the first, I would say, 20 to 30 minutes when you're watching the movie, you just, at least I was just taking it all at face value. You know, I never thought like, oh, maybe we're having some unreliable narrator issues, you know. So I was believing everything they told me. And it's not until we hit a certain point in the movie that you start questioning if everything that you've been told so far is accurate. So to answer your question, now that I've seen the movie, I think for my own sanity, I have to assume that when we see, for example, when we see Ron Livingstone at home, interacting with his wife, played by
Selma
Blair. Yeah. Well, that is the truth, because that's not something that Evan Rachel Wood's character is telling us.
Oh, God, that scene's brutal.
I'm a little schoolgirl. La 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 la. I don't want to be late for class. I don't want Mr. Anderson to spank me.
It is, but that scene 100% defines the character, you know, going backwards and forwards, right? Like once that scene happens, then everything that you see him do, you know, has this tinge of creepiness, more than a tinge, I would say. For those of you who haven't seen the movie, it pretty much establishes that he likes young girls.
And Brittany says, we think he's a podiatrist. Obviously, meaning to say pedophile, but accusing Berger of being a foot doctor.
Now, as far as we know, he is... Man, this is tricky territory, because it's like he has a fetish, but he's not, at least as the movie opens, it's not like he's done anything to anybody other than, you know, Selma Blair. He buys her like a skirt that makes her look like a student, makes her read a note that was written by a student.
Yeah,
so
basically role play.
Yeah. It's a very brave choice for Ron Livingstone to just say, you know, this is what I want to tackle next. Because it's a character that if he doesn't play him well, it's a joke. And a joke, and like a bad joke, like we're gonna make fun of him. And he plays him well, we're not gonna like him. So there's really not a winnable situation. Everybody else kind of like comes out, like Evan Rachel Wood plays a pretty manipulative, very she's also a villain, but she comes across as a, you know, like a really good actress, and just somebody that really owned it. Whereas like Ron Livingstone, he's playing that part that we don't want to talk about. Just want to skip past the Ron Livingstone subplot and let's just get to the other stuff.
I appreciate this was still in the era of wearing glasses made you weird, because they just put glasses on Ron Livingstone to, you know, he's a hunk, but then he puts his glasses on. He's like, ooh, this guy maybe trying to mac on these high school girls. Now, of course, we know glasses make you hotter, so thank God that worked out.
But it's not just him. I mean, it's his friend, his buddy, who's also a teacher there, right?
He's more of in some ways, more of a creep. I mean, they're both fucking degenerates, but that dude's... I think the difference is that dude just seems like an idiot, whereas Ron Livingstone at least has somewhat of a head on his shoulders.
Yeah, I mean, he's married to Selma Blair, so he has to keep it together.
God fucking bless. Roger, a clueless high school law teacher who passed the bar. That's his friend here, who's just an imbecile. Cinematically, though, you know, we were talking about there's a school play going on, and what Kimberly wants is to be cast as Anne Frank. There's this awesome shot of like behind the casting sheet, and we're seeing people react to it. I thought that was excellent. So she gets the part of Anne Frank, which her friend Brittany wanted. So this, of course, begins some strife and turmoil between the two, but it's quickly resolved as Evan Rachel Wood, Kimberly, assures her that, you know, there's no harm, no foul, and this will be fine. And then they part by saying, down with Nazis. Percy keeps Kimberly and Randa for after-school detention for disrupting class, and forces Kimberly to write a note talking about, her bad doings, her bad deeds, that type of thing. But she oversees, in the next office over, him putting his hands on Randa, and really it's a hand on the shoulder, the move or the finger under the chin to make them look up and make eye contact. Regardless, inappropriate, not something that a fucking male teacher should be doing to a female student. I think that's pretty standard.
The worst part is that he closes the blinds.
Yes. My note just says burgers up to no good.
It's true. And, up till before he closes the blinds, you could say, oh, maybe she's misunderstanding what she's seeing.
Yeah.
But then closing the blinds is like an admission of guilt.
That's the whole thing. Like, we do find out later in the movie, she kind of misinterpreted. He should have never put his hands on her in the first place, but she did misinterpret what the conversation happening was. But then this fucking idiot just closes the blinds, so he looks like a criminal, a podiatrist.
Yeah. So Randa is our introduction. She helps us be introduced into this world. This is it's the high school movie scene where we're giving a tour of the high school and they point the clicks and the important characters we're gonna see throughout the movie. And that's what before they get attention, Evan Rachel Wood just does this, and it was. It feels like we've done, over our run here, the Contrarians, we've done a number of movies that fit that mold, that do this sequence to different degrees of success. And I was like, you can't watch this without thinking of Heathers, of Mean Girls, even Jawbreaker, which we covered on Patreon. And I was like, that's the evolution, I think. Like Heathers walked so Mean Girls could run, so Pretty Persuasion could fly. And Jawbreaker just going to watch from the sidelines.
And Neon Demon just kind of jacked off in the corner.
Yes.
We get our introduction to Kimberly's parents, Hank, played by James Woods, and Kathy, played by Jamie King. If you think you've been able to kind of keep up with this, it does kind of have like a Mean Girls feel at the beginning, which Mean Girls, we would have been just, I think, a year removed from that. And where she's shown around the school, and it's like, oh, don't talk to that guy. It's kind of fun and light until she calls out the one student that sells guns. And it's like, Jesus Christ, dude. And obviously that's a very bleak joke to make in 2005. And obviously it's not aged any better.
But it pays off.
It does.
It's not like a random. So I appreciated that because I had the same reaction. And then I could not believe that the last, 5 minutes of the movie paid that off.
Yeah. It's Jesus Christ, this movie, dude. One of the things that's like the sub story throughout it is a school shooting happened at a nearby school. Big tragedy there. And that seems to be like fresh on the minds of everybody. But even still, could kind of see this as being I don't want to say like Clueless, but kind of a light high school movie with a bit more of a mature possible drama to it. And then we get to the scene here with her parents, and it's just kind of like, all right, even though this movie's been, you don't know what's coming, this is where you just kind of throw your hands up and like, man, what are they doing with us here? This is out of control. Because we get James Woods, the director and writer here, Siga and Halim, warning us about what's to come with James Woods as he's just unleashing dangerous rhetoric and racist, anti-Semitic statements, paying no attention to the world around him.
There is a difference between bona fide racism and just speaking the truth, which is what I'm doing here. You understand that, right? A big difference.
Do you think that the script, if you download the screenplay for Pretty Persuasion, when you get to that page, it just says like, let James Woods talk.
Jim speaks. That's all it says.
Cut him loose. It's wild. I can't make up a mind to decide if James Woods' current standing when it comes to the world, if it benefits the movie or if it harms it. You know what I mean? Like,
so I think he is fucking hilarious in some parts of this movie. None of like the racist or anti-Semitic stuff really made me laugh, but like he has a few moments in this that are genuinely really funny in a way he can only deliver lines. But watching this now, obviously, like that thing I just said about the buying a gun at school not aging well, knowing what we know about James Woods now, does it intensify the comedy or does it make it like watching it, you know, through your fingers type thing?
I think it detracts from his performance, which is a shame. Because I think, like, politics aside, unhinged Twitter rants aside, James Woods is a good actor, a great actor sometimes. Even he played Hades in Disney's Hercules. I mean, that's just like top of the mountain, right?
Videodrome, dog.
Yes, that too. I mean, Cronenberg is not Disney, but still, it's right there, upper echelon.
And
but
his Simpsons role as himself is also great. Just had to get that in there.
Well, the thing is that because his performance here seems to be so close to his now public persona, it's very easy to kind of like fall into the trap of thinking, well, he's not even acting. He's just being himself. And so, you know, it'd be opposite. It'd be very different if you had somebody like, let's say Chris Evans, just to pull a name that's, you know, if you had Chris Evans play this part, exact same dialogue, all that stuff, and he pulled it off, you would be amazed. You would think, man, give this man a supporting actor Oscar. But you see James Woods doing it, and you just... It's almost underwhelming. It just feels like exactly what you would expect from him because of the image that he has now for people like us. I wonder what the experience of watching this movie is if you're a hardcore Republican. You probably don't even make it to this scene.
Oh, no. You're out already.
The moment she bends to get to pick up that baguette, you're out. You're off to talk to the manager. You
see Kendra Wilkinson, like, oh, she's from the Devil Show from the mid-2000s.
But anyway, this is not the movie's fault. They cast an actor that's a good actor, and then history happened years later. So, but still, you know, it's like when you watch it today. But I have to keep my head in the game and be like, yeah, it is a good performance. Let's assume that it's a good performance. Even if he was just playing himself, it works in the movie because the whole point is that you should be horrified.
It's not looking good. It seems like Kimberly's already just processing or, you know, brewing up some bad shit to happen. My note says, is she going to kill people? The aforementioned Selma Blair shows up. I applaud silently as I watch this movie because God bless Selma Blair. This is where we learn kind of Anderson's kink, what he's into. He buys his wife for her birthday a skirt, and they role play a teacher-student type thing, and he makes her read a note about being bad that we come to find out later Kimberly wrote. So there's this whole extra level of like, ew. We don't know it right here. It's already kind of ew. It's like, ew. And then later it's like, ooh, man, what the fuck?
This is talent because you're right. It's one of the most uncomfortable scenes in the movie, but it's also funny. I mean, it's really funny in a fucked up way, but because Selma Blair even brings it up. She's like, oh, look, I look just like those students at your school. And Ron Livingston's reaction is like, really?
Oh, yeah. He starts laughing. Like, he has a, and then his face gets really serious. He like takes his glasses off.
Yes.
The three girls, Kimberly, Brittany, and Randa, have a sleepover. They watch porn, smoke cigars, eat Twinkies. It's kind of at this point, it's revealed they all share an eating disorder, which is obviously very unfortunate. This, I don't know, you know, that word triggering for some people of past trauma of any kind of walk. I think this movie needs to come with a warning. Like, we'll talk about this more in the second half, but you know, recommending this movie to someone needs to come with like a big blanket statement of like, hey, it includes all these things. One of which is watching porn together with your buddies. Is that ever happening in Peru? You and the boys ever watch porn at a sleepover or anything?
You know, I like off the top of my head, I think that we might have done it once, and it was just kind of weird.
Yeah.
so I was like, let's not do this again.
Question for you. Do you think it's supposed to be kind of tongue-in-cheek that Evan Rachel Wood's supposed to be 15 in this movie? Is it supposed to be kind of funny? Are they supposed to look older than 15 in this? Or do you think that doesn't play into it at all? Because I really couldn't tell if that's supposed to be part of the joke, because she's clearly I think she's 20 or 21 at the time of this movie.
I hadn't considered that. Because I have two answers to the question, one for Real Talk and one for Contrarians Corner. So in Contrarians Corner, I can tell you this. I think that it's that's one of the movie's strengths, I think, just how bold it is when it comes to tackling teenage sexuality. It's something that, funnily enough, it came up during our Grease 2 episode.
Yeah,
because Grease 2 is set in high school.
It is supposed to be funny because Shooter McGavin's 40 in that movie.
Exactly, but what we brought it up in the discussion is that because that movie is all about sex, and it's not that, I guess, jarring because you're seeing adults. I mean, we also brought it up during the Linklater movie, Dazed and Confused, right? Like it's that there were some things that were kind of that took you off because some of the girls look really young compared to the guys that look really old, or definitely not teenagers. And so I think that there's always an element of in the real world, sexuality when you're growing up as a teenager is it's a thing. So there's that, and I think that predictably, unsurprisingly, most movies stay away from that or kind of sanitize the experience because in a way, nobody wants to go to the movies to see teenagers being sexual, because it's really hard to pull off. And this movie, I don't want to say that it gives no fucks about it. It's more I think that this movie has things to say, and in order to say them, it needs to sexualize every character in it, including the teenagers. So you're not going to see it, in mainstream movies. And I think it opens you to a lot of criticism if you don't pull it off. But overall, I think that it's very much the point, or one of the points of the movie, that she is 15.
Okay, look, I'm really trying, but I don't know how to be sexy. I mean, I'm only 15.
It's okay, dear.
So what they drudge up here is that they are going to accuse Mr. Anderson of sexually harassing each of them. And they know he's a teacher, so he's not going to be able to... They first don't think it's going to go to trial, but then we learn, he's a teacher, so they're not worried about him being able to get a high-priced lawyer. So his dumbass friend, Roger, who he referenced earlier, ends up acting as attorney just because he passed the bar. I think he says in 1996 or something like that.
Actually, I guess Evan Rachel Wood always counted on it going to trial.
Oh, yeah, she did. Because the end of this movie does have, it's a backtrack. It's like a 12 Monkeys type thing of all the stars aligning.
Kaiser Soze is revealed to be Evan Rachel Wood.
Exactly. But as it goes to trial, well, first of all, there's a fantastic scene of Selma Blair sitting with Ron Livingston talking to their friend Roger, and she's like, how can these three girls just besmirch the reputation of, an upstanding man like my husband, something like that. And Ron Livingston goes, God, that was a good use of besmirch. It's a really funny moment. But we get some really unhinged James Woods where he tells his daughter, you better not be making this up because I don't want a reputation for having... He calls her a slut or a whore for a daughter or something like that. And we see him jacking off under his underwear when he's on the phone with a sex line and doing coke, wearing sunglasses indoors with an open robe. He's just unhinged, man.
It's also a fearless performance, as they like to say.
It certainly is.
Because this is, this is a step up. Even if you think of his Twitter persona now, I mean, Twitter is just words on your screen. This is him. It is not a flattering picture. Even if you, okay, let's say that what he's saying is how the real James Woods thinks. The way he looks, the way he's portrayed physically is just gross. And I think even James Woods is office rocker as he is in the real world. Even he probably has to know that this is, that he looks disgusting. I don't think that he may be proud of the things that he says, but there's no way that he's proud of the way he looks. And so that is a kind of like a very generous performance in that sense, that he's just like, there's no vanity. He's just like, this is the way that the character needs to look. Gross.
Incredible shot of him, though. I think it's at the first scene in the trial. It's when Kimberly's testifying. There's like this panning shot, and you see him behind the prosecuting attorney, and he's got like a newspaper open in front of him, and then you see that he's asleep, and then he like jolts forward. He's like, huh? And then he wakes up. But when it gets to trial, it becomes kind of a retelling of some of the events we didn't see in the movie. One of them being that she, being Kimberly, was removed as Anne Frank in the play because she was caught talking to one of her classmates, a Jewish classmate who has a father for a lawyer, as a fucking slur, dog. Can't get away with that shit.
There are consequences.
Shouldn't. You shouldn't get away with that shit. Sadly, some people do.
Here's the movie, again, being really clever about it, because she gets in trouble. Like, the movie makes the point that it is, you know, she did something wrong, she gets punished for it, even though the reason behind the punishment is more of a PR reason, right? The principal, because he knows that the reporter is there, and he just doesn't want to court any potential scandal. But then what follows, what this leads to, is a scene between Evan Rachel Wood and the classmate that she had offended, and she apologizes, and then he actually reacts positively. They're friendly towards each other. You know, it's like there's an apology, and then
there's some sexual tension in the air too.
Yes, I mean that eventually leads to actual sex. But I guess I was expecting him to not take the apology, because that's what you expect from a teenager. But instead, he is receptive to it, and even acknowledges that yes, his father does let criminals go free as a lawyer.
But then he also calls out that his dad isn't. He's very
generous with his money.
He overspends. He's like, he has like 3 sports cars, and he bought me a rare dog that only eats tuna fish. And the principal's like, "Get the fuck out of my office."
But yeah, that's a point where the movie surprised me, and it's really uncomfortable to hear her say that slur, but you kind of need it to get to that scene, and you need that scene for everything else to play out the way that it plays out. So again, just massive props to the way that this story is structured.
So the trial is brutal. The recountings we get from Kimberly and Randa, and then Brittany also, who tells the story of being like victimized in a play rehearsal, to the point of like, you know, it seemed like fucking Berger was getting his rocks off to this. It's really uncomfortable scene.
I appreciate that you keep calling him Berger throughout this recap, because it really takes the edge off.
Sorry, man. Some actors are just stuck with some roles forever. Like Kristen Bell's always going to be Sarah Marshall. In this case,
for you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should specify for me. Yes. Mickey Rourke. Even if I call him Mickey Rourke, it'll usually be accompanied by the Ram. And in this case, Ron Livingston is always Berger. But we know these are lies. They're telling, or at least exaggerations of the truth. But we're seeing, you know, some of the scenes that were vague earlier being played out for us. And there's no, this is not a case of Percy Anderson being completely innocent. He's obviously up to no good and a dirty man. So it puts you as an audience member in a fascinating position as a viewer, just to realize like there's no one to root for here.
In this one in particular, it's I think that this one's pretty clear that what we see happening is pretty close to what happened, because there's so many witnesses. You know what I mean? Like even his own lawyer, his friend, is like in the back. So that's a story that happens in public. And Evan Rachel Wood is there, Ron Livingston is there, his buddy's there. I guess the boyfriend, Josh, is there. So everybody sees Brittany being humiliated. And at the best, like if you want to be charitable about the Ron Livingston character, he is just really clumsy in handling a really bad situation.
when one of them quotes him as saying, "I'm going to touch your boobs," he stands up and say, "I wouldn't say boobs. I'd say breasts or bosom." Not the words of a guy who's completely innocent.
No.
Now,
It's no surprise that, jumping ahead a little bit, no surprise that Selma Blair leaves him.
I know. We needed more Selma Blair in this movie, but he couldn't even handle that. She just storms out on him. Now, speaking of not completely innocent, to the point of being downright guilty, Jackie Jump, Jenna Maroney, is the reporter that's extensively covering the case, because it's obviously a fucking media bonanza there in Beverly Hills. She's a local lesbian reporter, and shortly after the trial begins, she's played and basically wooed and enticed to Kimberly via Kimberly quoting the porn they watched earlier. The line was, I like cock too much, but sometimes I need the touch of a woman, something like that. And Jenna is just, blasting out of her pants at this. And we get a scene in which they have a sexual encounter. I was like shocked because the way that it's framed throughout the movie is there are these shots of characters and we see them from the...
I was going to bring that up. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an overhead shot of a character laying down on their back in a bed with it's the shot of them from the waist up pretty much. And, we get to see multiple people's O faces in this to cite a different Ron Livingston movie. And so when it's Jenna Maroney, we see her and her camera woman earlier in the movie, like they're canoodling. And then Evan Rachel Wood comes up and you can kind of see it coming, but I was shocked. I was like, my thought was when they showed that is there's no way the movie's going to go here.
Yep.
And you know what? The movie Dawn Gun there.
Yes. Which when it happens, you just go, of course, because that's where the movie's been heading the entire time. I mean, it keeps escalating in its boldness in the way it depicts things. And yeah, it wasn't going to, at this point, this late in the proceedings, it wasn't going to shy away from having a sexual relationship between an adult reporter and a teenage student. I mean, that is just, and it's played for not even for laughs. It's just more like it's played to advance the plot. You know what I mean? Like
it's played for, hey, this thing happened.
Yeah. It's not played as in like, oh, this is gonna be sexy, and it's also not played as a comedy. It's just played because this needs to be there in order for the ending to work out the way it does. Like many things that happen in this movie, it's just part of the puzzle.
I bet you've never seen one of those before.
Silly girl. I have one.
Oh, right.
Josh Zuckerberg resurfaces. As we mentioned earlier, his dad is a famous local attorney, and he convinces his dad to help represent Mr. Anderson because his attorney's an idiot and he knows he's innocent. He asks him to do it pro bono, is what he says. But he says it with such conviction and honesty. It's pretty funny. So he takes the case, and on his first day, he's going to cross-examine Brittany. And as he goes up to question her, we get a flashback to when the actual plan was devised. And Randa has the great line of, Kimberly asks, "You know what makes America great?" And she goes, "Sylvester Stallone," and explains, what they're going to do. They devise this evil plan. And Brittany goes, "Okay, well, I have to testify because, as you know, I'm no good under pressure." And then it just title card, and we're back. And before the lawyer can even say anything, she just lets it all out. She says it's a lie. Every word of it's a lie. In one moment, it brings up a really questionable choice in story of this, because it's one of those things of, well, what are we trying to say here? Because these victims lied, and this discredits other people who have legitimate cases of abuse and that type of thing.
Yep.
But it's also, it's set up so brilliantly from a comedic standpoint, because it's the Norm Macdonald thing where the setup and the punchline are the same thing. It's her explaining, "I don't do good under pressure," and then you get the title card of, let's see if she's good under pressure, basically. And then there's no pressure, and she just completely breaks. So it's not often, regardless of how you feel about what they're saying here, what they're presenting, that I come across a scene like this that is pulled off perfectly from a comedic standpoint, but also is like filled with so many questions and like a loaded approach. You know what I mean? Like there's just so much going on here.
Yeah, it's exactly what you said. And I think that much like the James Woods performance or James Woods casting, I did something else where I am torn between what time has done to that specific aspect of the movie now that we're in the Me Too era or the post Me Too era, and it stands out even more that a movie would go there, would basically be about three women lying about sexual assault. And to its credit, the movie acknowledges it. Like the movie has the Jenna Maroney character explicitly tell Evan Rachel Wood, do you have any idea how much damage you've done? Beyond ruining Ron Livingston's reputation and making him lose Selma Blair. And it's a big swing. And I think that you're right. There's a lot happening the moment that they admit their guilt. And I think that reveal, it certainly opens a conversation that obviously needed to be had, in America, in the entire world. And I feel like it didn't really come to the forefront until almost 2 decades later. But it's complicated because when you look at it now, you can't help but feel like I wish they hadn't done that because it's just so it's not quite the movie that we needed. But back in 2005, it was kind of a different context, I guess. You had to get the conversation started somehow.
And yeah, she confronts her about it and says, fuck you. Can't believe you did this. And then she reveals, well, I videotaped us having sex, so you are going to continue to support me publicly, or I will turn you in to, your boss, the authorities, etc., etc., etc. Probably the hardest I laughed in the entire movie, though, is after she reveals that it's all a lie. Robert Joy, Larry Horowitz is his character's name, says no further questions. And it's just quiet in the court. And then James Woods stands up in the back and just goes, cocktails, and leaves. I laughed extremely hard at that.
I thought that you were going to tell me that there was I think it might be like a previous scene. There's a moment where there's a really bad joke and one of the jurors laughs. And I was like, oh, it's that trope that Alex likes, where somebody makes a really awkward joke and one person.
I do. You're right. That's a good call. I do enjoy that, but that part was just, I didn't include that because it was so fucking gross and just vile that I didn't want to repeat that.
I don't remember what the joke is. I just remember the punchline, I guess, or the bit of with the juror laughing. Well, bile and gross, I mean, it's kind of like what this movie's going for intentionally. I think that if you get to the end of this movie and you're not disturbed, shaken by the things that are happening, the things that are revealed, then the movie didn't do its job. So that's good.
It's true. Unfortunately, we take one last really dark turn before the end of the movie, and Randa ends up where Randa pays off what Julio mentioned earlier in the movie with the student who sells guns. She obviously goes and buys one and sadly commits suicide in the classroom where she had detention initially, writing on the blackboard. I think it was "We are all sinners," she writes.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. And Evan Rachel Wood kills her dad's dog, which I, of course, did not care for at all.
I completely missed that.
She takes the pills that her dad threw at her and told her to fuck off, and she opens the bottle and just dumps them all out at her feet, and the dog starts eating them.
I saw that happen. It didn't register that was going to kill the dog. I was just like, oh, she's just getting rid of his pills. Like, I wasn't... I was more concerned about James Woods.
I think that's the implication, and if so, not cool.
That's fucked up because it was her dog. Although I guess... she never really showed any... she didn't show like she cared much.
Yeah, and obviously James Woods loved it, and more than her, so... but before we can get out of there, did you catch the one last cameo that we get in this?
Is it... how appropriate Because we just saw her also basically in a cameo in Being John Malkovich.
Mm-hmm. Rob Zombie's Halloween 2's Octavia Spencer.
This is her side business. She'll have her starring roles that get her Oscar nominations, and then every now and then she'll pop up in a movie for one scene with one line of dialogue.
With the trial the way it went, and Kimberly then becoming the it girl, handling the shaming and such grace, I guess you say. She ends up getting that part on the soap opera that she auditioned for at the beginning of the movie. The movie concludes with Brittany coming over and Kimberly admitting to her the whole reason she did this was because, Troy Nelson went with her instead. It was all over a boy. And that's literally what Brittany says. This is all over a boy. And so Randa killed herself, and every war has its casualties. As she says, just ask my brother, who we find out was a member of the military that went over to Iraq and died. And that's something I think we'll talk about more in the second half because it doesn't really play into what we're doing here. But calls her a psycho, storms out and leaves. And the movie ends with Kimberly watching herself on TV and crying. First, she watches the school shooter, emotionless, talk about mowing down all his classmates. And she has no reaction to that, but seeing herself on TV brings her to tears. It's a very...
is it a single tear, Alex? Does she do a Denzel, or...?
It starts as a single tear, but then she does the thing where she lets him well up, and then she blinks very dramatically, so they roll down both cheeks. It's a very unsettling way to finish the movie.
I think it tells you that she is... she's aware of what she's become. At least that's how I read it. She sees what she's accomplished and she doesn't feel joy at it. Instead, she feels all this misery at, was it all worth it? And I think the answer is no. I would also call out that before she sees the shooter on TV, she grabs a copy of The Diary of Anne Frank with a dedication from her brother, which is something that she had told Ron Livingstone. She's like, my brother left me a copy of The Diary of Anne Frank before he left, and that's why I want the part. And Ron Livingstone thought that she was bullshitting, as I think most of the audience would, because by then we know that she's manipulative and that she likes to, make up stories and to further her standing. And that's a big reveal that suddenly you see that, no, she was not lying. That book is there, and it's, next to the picture of her brother. So it makes you wonder, okay, well, how much of what she said is true? How much of what she said was only a slight exaggeration? I mean, I think it says something that we know that it's true that she has the book, but we really don't know how much she actually cares. If she actually cares, or if the book is just a prop for her. It's really complex, and I think that the one thing we haven't done during Contrarians Corner, and I don't want to end it without doing it, is praising Evan Rachel Wood's performance, because she's at the center of this movie, and she is we were giving props to Ron Livingstone for taking that character and taking a role that's so off-putting, but she does the same thing in a way. I mean, she kind of comes out on top, but I wouldn't blame any actors for reading this part and going, no, you know what, I don't want to. I'll do something else instead. But yeah, she pulls it off, and then by the end, when she's crying and basically looking at the camera, it's powerful.
It is. It's a unsettling but fitting way to conclude this fucking tornado of a movie.
A tornado given to us by a patron. So we'll hear what he has to say. Yes, we'll hear what he has to say once we get to real talk. Are you ready for that, Alex?
I am. Let's move it along.
Hello?
Kimberly, hi, it's Barry.
Hi, Barry.
I haven't seen you lately.
I've actually been thinking, how can I put this tactfully? Barry, I never really liked you all that much, and I think we should break up. Barry?
It always goes down easy.
What?
That was one of the reasons why beer's better than a woman.
Oh.
If it's flat, you can throw it out.
Okay, Barry,
You don't have to wash it before it tastes good.
I really gotta go, okay?
It's always wet.
Barry.